I believe those who are generous to others, generosity is poured back into them. There was an old expression I remember in the church that where people say, you can't beat God's gift no matter how hard you try. So it's not that money is evil. Loving money is where it becomes problematic.
All right, welcome to another edition of the Journey to Freedom podcast. I am Dr. B, and I am your host today. Just excited about the days and what's happening. We are now in January of 2025. It seems like time just begins to fly when you are out there doing the things that help others and can serve people and can move the lives of people. And I was just talking, my wife and I the other day, we were just talking about how life has changed. Even a year ago, when I decided to start this podcast, I went to a leadership conference that was in Minnesota, and it was a guy named David Horsager who was talking about trust. And how do we start with trust? Why does trust matter? Where is when we come into a conversation with anybody, it doesn't go well, or I'm not going to say it goes well or bad. I'm just saying that we don't open up to people unless we trust them. And there was such good research that was put together in. He's got a few books. I mean, trust called The Trusted Edge, just some really good stuff. When I looked around the room, and Mike, I don't know if you do some of the same things that I do, but I looked around the room and I'm like, where are all the people of color in this room? Why is our community? Because when I think about my life and the times when trust mattered, I think, we have in our community just a tough time trusting not only ourselves. We have trouble trusting our communities. We have a trust each other, and we have a trust problem trusting everybody else. We think that people are out there sometimes just to harm us or to not allow us to move forward. And that's not without evidence. That's not without, I can't say the last 400 years in our country have been the greatest place for Black men, but I can say that we have opportunities like we've never had before. We have, places that we can go, and there are so many people doing things. I was talking, to Michael just before the show and said, most of our country lives on the East Coast, and so if you live on the East Coast or Eastern time zone. So, some people say, well, I'm in the Eastern time zone, but it's not on the coast, right? Michael's from Virginia, but wherever you turn, if you look, you can find successful men doing some phenomenal things in our country. And I want to highlight a lot of those. And today is no exception. Today I have Michael T. Brown on. He lives on the, in that Eastern time zone, lives not far from DC, where we start thinking about what can we do to make our world better. And so, Mike, I want you to tell your story. I want you to talk about where you've come from, where you've been, and, more importantly, what are you doing now that's making a difference in our world? And so I'll go ahead and let you get started, and then we'll just kind of chop it up after that.
Excellent. Well, first of all, thank you, Dr. B, and Happy New Year to you and all your listeners.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you sharing this platform. And a little bit about me, my story. Well, my background has been, extensively as a counselor and as an educator professionally. But as you mentioned, our story just doesn't start in adulthood. It goes back to a lot of our experiences. And I know my experiences being raised in a pastor's home helped shape a lot of the work that I do now. Both my parents served in ministry, and that gave me an up-close look of what it means to show up for others and to do it without being overly concerned with what's in it for me. I think one of our greatest opportunities in life are when we're serving others. There's a spiritual teaching that says, let the greatest among you be your servant. And I believe, wholeheartedly in the importance of serving others. And I've had the opportunity to do that as a school counselor. And now I'm in private practice as a licensed professional counselor. I see individuals, families, couples here regionally in this area, and I do coaching and consulting as well around the country. And I've had the opportunity to meet some really tremendous people and help them on their journey towards personal growth. So I appreciate you sharing this platform and look forward to an engaging conversation here.
All right. Well, cool. So did you grow up in Virginia, or is that where you're from? Or are you from another part of the country?
Well, I lived in a couple places before settling here in Virginia. North Carolina. My parents both born and raised in Asheboro, North Carolina, home of the zoo there.
Mhm.
And so spent a couple years there after, being born there, a couple years there. And then we moved to New York, Newburgh, New York. My father ministered upstate New York. Well, actually, he ministered there in the city, there in right downtown there. And we had the opportunity to then eventually move back to North Carolina, probably around my late elementary. And then I finished, grade school down there, and decided to settle here in Virginia sometime later.
Okay. So when we think about identity, and I'm just going to kind of jump in right here. When I think about those two states or those two regions of our country, one predominantly we would call the South, and then New York we're going to call the North, right? And so you have to kind of come to grips with your identity, not only in the household and the parents and the people you grew up with, but in the cultures that surround those. What are some of the things that help shape that your identity, and maybe some of the pivotal points that you can reach to that said, oh, this is why I decided to be a counselor, this is why I do the things that I do today?
Yeah, great question. I think the identity starts in many ways, with our first connection to our parents, our family, right? And then our community. I heard it put in three categories. When we're born, we're dependent, right? On our parents. Then we move towards independence, right? Wanting to be on our own. And then the third level is interdependence, where I think we start to learn that we're actually connected to each other. And I got a really great lesson in that early on, in that, life showed me early on that in order to be successful, we need each other. And that's why I'm so, encouraged by the work you're doing, with your journey to freedom, because it's really steeped in, right, understanding that in many ways, no man or woman is an island. And that it takes a village, right, to raise a child. And I'm a recipient of that village of family members, friends, community, church, sports, surrounding me with that helps secure my identity. And that identity in many ways was steeped in the principle of service. And that is that, when we show up for others, when we show up to make others great, we in turn become great. And that's been the mission I've been on. So in many ways, I think the profession chose me, in that I think some of it's just how I'm wired to want to help others and serve others. And I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like, but from education to counseling, and it's been a tremendous journey.
Okay, I love it. When I think, I heard the other day, because you said the words, it takes a village, and I've been saying that for years.
Yeah.
Since I entered into education as a PE teacher in the '90s. But one of the things that I've kind of evolved to, and somebody said this on my podcast last time, is it takes a village of dependable folks with values to raise a child, or to have a child come up, because we all are being raised by a village. We just have to examine the village that we're part of, and then how do we find those values and those principles within our culture and within the things we do. Are there like associations or pivotal things or times in your life where you said, this is where I became the man that I needed to be, or the man that I am today, based on, maybe there's some coaches or some teachers, or, I know your parents were a big part of it, or deacons, or, what kind of shaped that for you?
Yeah, I look at it as pivotal moments. I can't say there's just one, defining moment, but I would say there's pivotal moments, and some of them were birthed in adversity. Okay. When things didn't go well, when the plan that maybe I set out to achieve was interrupted or delayed, or it got confusing. And I think of a story where I was planning to go to college, and the college I intended to go to, things didn't work out as I intended. So me and my father were at an impasse about how to navigate this. interdependence, and he was pretty adamant on his position, and I was pretty adamant on mine. And he got his way the first year, and I figured it out the second year that I had to make moves that was important to me. And I think ultimately we respected each other because of that, because, you know, when you have people who are pulling for you and want to see the best for you, I think that's a good reminder that we might not have the same ideas of how to get there, but when we connect with people who love us and support us, and we know we're on the same team, we can work together to get where we need to get. That was one defining moment that really stands out.
I love it. Well, and one thing that just brought to you said the word adversity.
Yeah.
And then immediately in my brain came the iron sharpens iron. I guess cliche or words that people put together.
Yeah.
And then, but in order for the iron to sharpen the iron, it has to touch each other, right?
That's right.
It has to touch each other with force. It can't just be, oh yeah, we got two swords that are sitting out next to each other, and all of a sudden they sharpen each other, right? It isn't sharpened until that force comes together through adversity that we become who we need to be. And without the adversity, sometimes we talk about some of the, I don't know, for lack of better thought process, the helicopter parents or whatever, that don't allow their kids to ever have any adversity because they're so hovering over everything that they do. How can they build character? How can they move forward into things they were doing? So you get your way your second year, and you decide this is the life that is going to ultimately become who Michael T. Brown is. What are some things that happened in that second year that let you know you made the right decision?
Great question. I would say things fell into place. Things, and I think so many people can relate to that, right? Where when we go with what's in our heart, when we go with where we feel led, that it doesn't mean there's not going to be bumps in the road. It doesn't mean there's not going to be adversity, but things tend to flow. Like it's like a good relationship. If in any good relationship, right, there's going to be some ups and downs, some adversity, but there should be a matter of flow there, that it doesn't feel like we're constantly climbing a mountain. So I would say that second year, things began to flow, and I found myself flourishing, and I found myself being more content and being more at peace because I went with my gut and I went with my instinct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we get to live in purpose, when we get to do the thing that God put us on this earth to do, everything flows, right? Everything goes the way. And it doesn't mean that that's the way it's going to be every single year for the rest of your life, that you are always, doing the same thing.
That's right.
It just means as long as you're following, I guess what God's purpose we have for our lives.
Yeah.
You brought up relationships, and I know you're a counselor in relationships as well, and having some good relationships. I started a show a few weeks ago. It's called Why Love Waits. It's part of the Journey to Freedom, where we're bringing in, based on the statistic, that 50%, almost it's like 49 point whatever percent of Black women who are age 40 and above have never been married. And of that 40, that 40, 50% who've never been married, 75% of them have children. And so I know as you're dealing with counseling and relationships, maybe you can just talk to us a little bit about how relationships, can be healthy and continue to be healthy, because I'm in the belief that man should not be alone. I read a couple of scriptures, as we started the show, but it seems like that gap from the 50s was, less than 20%. Now it continues to grow. And to me, it's almost on crisis status where, a lot of our problems come from terrible relationships or relationships that we don't know how to foster, how to do. So maybe you can just talk to us about that a little bit.
I think healthy relationships stem from healthy individuals. So at the end of the day, right, who we are, how we show up in a relationship is reflective of the work that we're doing on ourselves or have not been doing on ourselves. So how do we address that? I'd say what I call the big three: mental, physical, and spiritual health. What am I doing for my mental health? The books I read, the conversations I'm in, To learn and grow, to push ourselves, to learn more. Physically, how are we taking care of our physical bodies, right? Working out, how our lifestyle, our eating habits, and our spiritual health. What are we doing for that part of ourselves that we can't see? For some folks, it's through, connection through God, through religion, through nature, whatever the belief system is, right? We all have a spirit. In many words, I believe we are spiritual beings, right? So that's a lot of work to do individually. Then it's maybe time to say, okay, am I ready to connect with others, right? And that might not get a lot of likes or a lot of retweets because we want to sometimes just jump right in, and I encourage folks, before you jump off the diving board into the 12-foot of relationships, maybe you start down at the kiddie pool and walk your way up, right? And that's okay. I remember one client told me, she said, you know what, you can find me down at the kiddie pool. We had a nice little joke over there. Yeah, and because sometimes we think that other folks, if I just meet that other person, they'll complete me. But I believe people should compliment us, not necessarily complete us. Right? So and another point I would say is to decide if that's the lifestyle for you. It's okay to say, maybe that's not the lifestyle for me. That being single does not mean being unwhole. Every lifestyle choice, right, is not for everyone. And sometimes we just have to have that honest, frank discussion to say, is that the lifestyle that I want to live? And for those who do, that doesn't mean, right, the adversity stops. Matter of fact, there's a principle in Stoicism that says adversity is the way, right? That we can't run from it, whether that's single or married. That if we're healthy as an individual, we're going to be able to show up for others and have healthy relationships. Then sometimes if we're running into relationship problems, be willing to sit down on the couch and get help. Because some things just have not been taught, Brian. Effective communication, right? Effective problem solving, navigating life when it happens to us, not facing, that which we had hoped to face. And sometimes we need help. We need coaches. We need therapists. We need mentors. We need people that can help us navigate. Because not every relationship needs to be thrown on the, in the trash can. Some relationships can be repaired, can be restored, and if we'll just get help.
Yeah. But I think, how many relationships started out on rocky foundations. And I want to jump into, back to, and maybe, unpack a little bit deeper is on our mental health. And one of the things that you said that just caught my attention was likes and tweets and, things that go out. I'm a product or a child of, I graduated high school in 1983. So there was no internet in 1983. There was barely a computer in 1983. Then I go through the 90s and I become a computer teacher and I teach, and we get on this thing called the internet and all this. We didn't have information like we have today. We weren't bombarded with people's lives that aren't real. I'm sure a lot of the people's lives weren't real that I grew up around, that were lying or pretending, but you couldn't see it like thousands of days. A day, of people just showing their best life. Maybe it is their real life, but it's only a portion of the life that we get to see because that's what they put online. And then we start comparing ourselves with their best life, and our everyday life isn't matching up to their best life. How does a person, because you said we got to work on us first before we're ready for a relationship, how do we become healthy within ourselves with so much information and so much comparison?
Great question. I think a big part of it is to recognize first that personal growth has no finish line. Every day is an opportunity to learn more about ourselves and learn more about others. The technology can help us with that. But the key is to ask ourselves, who has more control? Me over the technology or the technology over me? So I encourage people, even as we start a brand new year, maybe it's time to reset and unplug a bit. I view social media in many ways kind of like a lifestyle magazine. Right? And we get the opportunity to connect with people like never before. It's a powerful tool. It's a powerful platform. We just need to make sure that there's boundaries, and realize that there's people every day who wake up, try to figure out how to sell us stuff on there and keep us on our phones. So now there's a bit of a competition there. We just got to decide who's going to win. And it's okay to use the technology for good. And once it starts drowning out our creativity, our productivity, then that's a clear indicator to say, let me reset, let me reboot, if you will, and make sure that I'm in the driver's seat and it's not driving me.
Wow. Yeah. And I look at that and I go, that is so true. I mean, we're on social media, right? This conversation that you and I get to have, you know, from two people that are from different parts of the nation, being able to utilize that. And there's so much good stuff.
That's right.
That is on there. It's just finding it sometimes. You know, I see people that, you know, the things that people want to watch, right? The things that people scroll through, the things that get millions and millions of hits, you know, are sometimes just the things that, you know, I guess it's just the way life is, that we're looking for stuff that.
It's kind of like, as you were saying that, I thought about, you know, it's my first time really drawing this analogy that, you know, in many ways, the technology or media is kind of like money in a way. It really just magnifies who you already are, right?
Like
and whatever you're looking for, it's out there. It's online. You can find it. So it's going to be a mirror of what it is that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So however much good is out there, folks can spend all day on the good stuff. Whatever is not good or counterproductive to us, it's out there. So it's like an accelerant in many ways. That's why the big three really matter so much. Does it line up with my mental health? Does it line up with my physical and my spiritual health? And ultimately, does it line up with my purpose? Yeah.
And I want to jump into, you know, time spent, like, you know, where you spend your time is where your heart is usually, you know, where you're at. And, you know, we say, well, we want these healthy relationships, but then we're not showing it by the time we spend, because we're able to, you know, I go to restaurants now, and I'm sure you do too. And you look around the room and everybody's on their device, right? There's 4 people sitting at a table, but the rest of the world is more important than the 4 people that are sitting across that table. You know, you see kids at, you know, dinner table or sitting, you know, for us, it was the TV tray and getting in front of the TV when I was growing up, and mom saying, no, we're going to come in, we're all going to sit at the table, we're going to have conversations. How, when, you know, as you're doing your counseling and doing your walk life, how are you helping people realize that these devices are distracting from really good relations? Or maybe they're not. Please, you know, help me understand what I see at the restaurant. And to me, that's like, wow, I have this opportunity to spend the time with the person who's right there. And yet whatever I'm doing over here is way more, it has my attention, I guess.
My first thought as you share that is to bring it close to home to me personally, and do our own personal inventory. How do I manage my time? Where do I find myself? What are my triggers? What are my tendencies? Because I try to be transparent from the standpoint of, you know, we all can make improvements. So I'm not the poster child of this, but we'll work at it if we'll make it an issue, if we'll be more intentional, if we'll put our own personal guardrails up, then I'm in a better platform to be able to help others reach their goals. So I think it starts internally first. How much time, where do I spend my time? Am I maximizing my efforts? So am I on target with my goals? What are my shortcomings? Because if sometimes we'll show folks our shortcomings, now they feel safer to share theirs. So I think the transparency matters. I heard a quote recently I really liked. It says, you know, humility invites us into a room. Arrogance kicks us out of that room.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
So when we lead with humility and say, hey, look, we all can make progress here. And in many ways, Dr. Bean, I imagine you can relate to this on a certain level where there's a phenomenon that whatever generation we grew up in was the good old days. Right, you know, right, like, you know, the 90s were so great, the 80s were so great, and there's parts of it obviously that we love and nostalgic about, but the pendulum swings in many ways, right? You know, now and parents are getting it. Parents are shutting down phones. Parents are saying, no, we're gonna. I go to restaurants and see a lot of people not on their phones, to be honest with you. And the reason why I say it, because I think the pendulum swings.
Yeah.
You know, eventually certain things we get kind of tired of or bored of, and it's kind of like, you know, let's engage. Now, that's not to dismiss in any ways the brutal facts that obviously the technology age has ramped it up big time. So there's no way around that. But at the end of the day, we get personal choice and personal autonomy to say, how will my family operate? How am I going to operate? And I think that ties into to the question you asked earlier about relationships and, you know, African American women and the you know, the marriage rate. And I think it's also statistics tell a story, but oftentimes they tell two stories. So some would say if, you know, the divorce rate is about 50%, which it usually is about every year, then why get married?
Yeah.
But yet folks keep still getting married. And I believe because people love love. And because 50% of things a marriage might not continue, you know, for a long period of time, that doesn't mean that 50% aren't doing well. So for somebody who's out there listening and they say, you know what, I'm in the category you're talking about. I'm in the percentage of, you know, individuals that you speak of who maybe haven't had that relationship success. Don't give up. You're not a statistic. Choices matter. If you get knocked down, you can pick yourself up and still accomplish the goals that you have out in front of
you. Yeah. That is so true. And you know, when I started thinking, when you said that, the good old days, you know, technology has made my life tremendously better. You know, I was what they call the special ed kid in the special ed, and technology has allowed me to thrive because I can do things like Google type and talk to it, and it will type for me without me making the errors of spelling and everything else that it took. But at the same time, I just, you know, I have 8 children and I have 16 grandkids at this point. And, you know, I think of their world and what they're growing up in and the things they have to deal with that, you know, we were worried about coming home when the street light came on and getting home before mom would be mad because we were outside playing.
Yeah.
You know, and some of my grandkids, depending on where they live, is like they got to worry about their surroundings and what's going on and the people that can impact their life in such a quick way. You kind of brought up finances a little bit or money, you brought up a quote about money, and I think about this relationship that we have with money and finance and how we work our way through it and what our belief system is around money. Maybe you can just share a little bit about, you know, why money. You know, obviously I don't believe money's everything. But it is when people tell me, well, you know, money is, you don't need money. I'm like, well, it's kind of like oxygen, because if you don't have it, it's our way of bartering and getting to be able to do some of the things we would love to do and not doing the things that we don't want to do. Like I don't want to raise chickens so I can have, you know, food on my table every single morning and eat, right? That's something I don't want to be part of my life. And I have to have money if I want to have some chicken. Right. And so give us some of your thoughts on finances and money. And because I know, I guess I don't know 100%, but I bet in a lot of your counseling sessions, when you're talking about things, money is part of that conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I believe money should be our resource, not our source.
Ooh, I like that. Okay.
Right? That it's a tool to be used. And if we're good stewards over it, it can help us and it can help others. And anything of value in our life, the better steward we are over it, the more impact we can make. And, you know, you talk about finances in families, it's one of the main challenges in marriages is, how do we manage money and finances? So many marital problems are caused when there's misalignment on money and the concept and the view of money. So, particularly with people who are looking to maybe get married, to do premarital counseling and make sure that finances is a part of the curriculum that you work through. I know it's part of, when I work with couples, it's a big part of what we talk about. And to decide what it is that we want to accomplish with our money, right? And to think about how we can positively impact others as well. I believe those who are generous to others, generosity is poured back into them. There was an old expression I remember in the church that where people would say, you can't beat God's giving, no matter how hard you try, right? And it's the principle of, and it's interesting, right? The Bible talks so much about money.
It does.
And one of the reasons why I believe is because it lines up with the teaching of, where your treasure is, your heart is.
Yeah.
So, right. So it's not that money is evil. Loving money is where it becomes problematic, because money, in many ways, it's a concept. It's how we use. It's a currency that we use to place value on something, and the value that we place on it, in many ways, is indicative. It's a mirror to how we see ourselves. Because if we'll do anything for it, then that might not mean we have enough value in ourselves. Some things can't be bought.
Yeah,
I've heard it put. I've never seen a hearse trailing I've never seen a U-Haul trailing a hearse.
Mm-hmm.
You can't take it with you.
You can't.
So right, some cultures tried and they just got robbed, right? and at the end of the day, right, to use it and not let it use us, I think goes a long way.
Yeah, because it does, it is the source of many issues, many problems, because we all have a relationship with it. And that has developed somehow in some way our belief system around what money does for you. And I love how you talk about it being the resource and not the source of things that you're trying to do, because it is such a, if relationships are what we're after, and I guess when I think of that, because that's true happiness or true, purpose. I don't know if you can have purpose without relationship. Is it possible? I mean, maybe you can let me know. Do you think, is it possible to be in purpose and not serve anybody and do it all by yourself?
I don't want to find out. I don't want to find out. And I think it's extremely hard, because at the end of the day, we don't live in a bubble, and we need to be able to connect well with others. And some people are obviously more introverted, others more extroverted. So it's okay to have our own personality style, for my belief, and to know our strengths and our areas of growth. But ultimate purpose, I believe, is maximized when we tap into something just bigger than ourselves. Yes. Limited purpose may get you there with that mindset, if it's just about me and mine. But if we want to, I would say, be great, it's about helping others to be great. And the two connect. When purpose and passion meet, man, then we're off to the races. Purpose. I know the reason for which a thing exists. I know why I'm here. And somebody may be watching this saying, I don't understand my purpose. I heard it put this way. I really like it. Said, discovering your purpose is kind of like trying new foods. Sometimes you just need to try enough stuff to figure out what you like.
There you go.
Right? Now, we don't want to spend too much time wasting, just randomly looking for things, but usually it lines up with something that's intrinsic to us, something that we feel called to do, something that feels natural to us. And our purpose, when it lines up with our passion, I'm excited about doing it, right? It brings me joy. It brings me satisfaction. I think that's the best marriage, is when it does connect to others, when our purpose and our passion meet.
Sometimes I think people, they find what they love. They find maybe what they think their purpose is, but they feel like because of where I am in life, or because of my past, because of, you know, the mistakes I've made or whatever it is, that I can't pursue my purpose. I just have to live with whatever life has dealt to me and given me at this point. What do you say to that individual, or that man that's kind of going, you know, I guess, you know, this is my job I have to have, I can't do anything else because I got, you know, a wife and I got kids, and, you know, I got to go make money, and whatever it is that this is what society told me I have to do instead of what I want.
Great questions you're asking. And I think so many people can identify with that feeling at some point in life, right? One thing that jumps out as you say that is, what headline can you live with?
Mm-hmm.
I tried and came up short, or I didn't try. And, it's okay to not have it all figured out. For example, a career path. So many people, I think, can relate to the fact that they didn't necessarily start out in their dream job, but if they love what they do and they're making an impact at it, use the setbacks as fuel. I'm reading a book here recently. I really love what was said. It says, attitudes are more important than the facts. Attitudes are more important than the facts, because we're all going to have some facts in our lives that might not line up with positivity or growth or success. But if we can change our mindset, if we can change our attitude, if we can change our perspective, then that can change our actions. Our actions can change our character. Our character can start to change our destiny. So for someone who's not on purpose, I say deal with your thought life. How do you think about it? Are you more optimistic or more pessimistic? Optimism, generally speaking, produces better results. Yeah. So the person who says, you know what, maybe I'm not at the dream weight I need to be, or should I try a relationship? Should I start saving money? Should I go back to school? I say to them, why not you? And what other lifetime are you going to do it in? Right? And it's okay to try and not fit. What's that?
Said 10 years is going to go by.
That's
whether
right.
you do it or not.
Exactly. And who do I need around me that can help inspire me or motivate me? And that's the beauty of the technology and the internet. Mm-hmm. I got mentors I've never met and will never meet.
Yeah,
they're long gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
But their life, their stories, their books, the videos still are connecting others. And I encourage you, Dr. B, to keep doing the work you're doing. You never know who might be watching a video that you did 10 years from now. It might outlive you. So somebody who takes an idea such as yourself and says, you know what, why not me? Let's create a platform. Let's create a podcast. And then boom, I meet you, and then here we are, right? So let that be a down payment to somebody who's listening today. Say, hey, you don't have to have it all. You don't have to have all the details laid out. What you need is faith. What you need, sometimes what we need is to step out on faith without the facts. I think it was Dr. King who said, right, faith is like walking down the steps in the dark. Mm-hmm. If the steps are there, doesn't mean you can't see it. So somebody may need to freshen up on their faith life today and say, believe again. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it is so good, because if you don't step out, if you don't, then you spend your life in regret, right? You spend your life in what if, sure. And I don't want to live the what ifs. I want to live, okay, I tried it, like you said. I when I think of try, I always go to that Yoda, the Empire Strikes Back, whatever, right? Do or do not, there is no try. But then I think about, well, there is, I do a talk where I talk about be, do, have. You got to become the person you need to be in order to do the thing you were put on this earth to do. And we get it so backwards because we try to go do all these things without becoming that person. And you talked about at the beginning that personal development, but you gave me a really good idea on here, because you said, what's the headline? And I think that's a great question to ask people. Like, I'd love to ask you, what is the headline you're working on? Or what's the headline you believe is going to be your life? And then kind of live towards that. in your mind, like right now with the things you're doing, what is that headline? What does that look like?
I say to teach, motivate, and inspire others to reach greatness. Yeah. Teach, motivate, and inspire others. And as I'm being inspired by others, that's a two-way street. That the greats are gracious. A friend of mine told me many years ago, he said, often those who refresh others are refreshed themselves. So when we spend our time trying to make others great, one of the awesome byproducts is that we become great. So that's a headline I'd like to live with. Help others to be great. Serve unapologetically. Yeah.
And what you made me think, because we're in a society right now, everybody wants to be the GOAT, right? The greatest of all time. We all have all these conversations of the great. But what you realize is that not one of those people that we believe, whether it's a Michael Jordan or, you think of Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King, whoever the GOAT was or the GOAT is, Simone, gymnast girl, right? Every single one of those folks has somebody great behind them that we might not know their name, that we might not know who fed into them, or hundreds of people that were behind them that created that.
That's right.
And so instead of saying, well, I'll never be the GOAT, how about being the person behind the GOAT that makes the GOAT?
And what to even take that, that's awesome. That's awesome. And as you're saying that, this idea came up. We so much talk about being the GOAT. Be the GOAT for someone else.
Yes.
How can we be the GOAT for someone else? That teacher who inspired you, who believed in you, their name might not be written in headlights.
Yeah.
I remember a pastor said many years ago, it really stood out. He said, you might not find your name up on headlights, but you can write your name into the heart of others.
Wow. Yeah.
That greatness is not necessarily quantified by just statistics. It's quantified by impact and our willingness to serve, our willingness to give, our willingness to meet people where they are. And then it's amazing, right? How if we'll be faithful over a few, God can make us a steward over much.
Yeah.
Those who are great often were just caught doing their job. They weren't focused necessarily on being big time. They may be focused on being big time at doing their best at what they were called to do.
Yeah.
Showing up. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love it. When we think about, and you brought it up that, your parents were in ministry, and we talk about our faith and, who we are as spiritual beings. How much of your life has, that faith and that spiritual side of you played a part in the man that you become? As I do these, like yesterday, I had a young man that, is searching, and he says he's searching, and he was bringing up, all the different, I guess I heard a lot of world religions that were part of it, and, he talked about crystals, and he talked about, him being able to channel past lives. And but he seemed, young 29-year-old man who is searching. Talk to me about how your faith or your groundedness in your spiritual walk is.
I'd say it's the elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm.
There's an old spiritual saying, we've come this far by faith. I don't believe it's just I've come this far by talent.
Yes. Okay.
And even if you want to take credit for the talent, who gave you the talent? Right? So the gift, I believe, comes from God, from our Creator. Mm-hmm. That's not to underestimate hard work and us doing our part. Obviously, we need to do our part and trust God to do His. I think that's a good blueprint. Do our part. Trust God to do His part. And when the two meet, now we're off to the races.
Gotcha.
So it's people who poured into, it's environments I was blessed to be around. I had an opportunity, Dr. B, to my dad would allow me to sit in on a lot of his conversations with other men. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
The nuggets, the knowledge, the ups, the downs, the ins, the outs, allowing to soak all of this up helped form me. It helped form my faith. And it allowed me to recover after the mess ups.
Because there will be.
It helped, absolutely. It helped me to recover when I wasn't on point. It gives us you talked earlier about identity. And I think in so many ways, men help secure a child's identity. I know who I am, right? When the father puts his thumbprint on the children, it helps form their identity. That way, when they go out into the world, they know who they are. When people try to tell them who they're not. Women do that as well. The mom does that as well. But I think in many ways, I think about women give the love and the nurture and support that sense of you're loved. And we know this goes both ways. Men and women provide both. But those that really stand out to me is that, and somebody here may be listening and say, I didn't grow up with a loving mom or a loving father. I didn't have that village that you speak of. I encourage folks, family can look many different ways. Maybe it's friends, maybe it's your community, maybe it's finding like-minded people to help you navigate some of the rough terrain of life, because we all at some point might need somebody. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So when we think about, people who are watching or people who are saying, okay, I want to have my best life. I don't know what that looks like. I only know what I've been trying to do, or the example that's been given to me based on where I grew up, the community I'm in. Like you said, maybe you didn't have a loving father, maybe you didn't have a loving mother. If you were to describe, what we're striving for, or a day in the life of a man who's kind of that we could look at as an example, or say, because nobody's perfect and we all got issues. But if we were striving for something, what would a day in the life of a person who is working on becoming that man, or becoming that person that can serve and do this to others, what does that look like in your mind, or what you're trying to hit?
Great question. I think it really connects to, one thing that stands out is, how do we start our day?
Yeah. And
in many ways, how we start our day is predicated on maybe the goals we set the night before.
Okay.
So those who are willing to plan and map out their day, it goes a long way. Don't let the day just overtake you. Set the stage for the day. Is it a devotional? Is it deep breathing exercises? Is it prayer, meditation? Is it phoning a positive person in your life? Having a mantra that you ascribe to? Is there a book that you're reading that helps set the stage for the day? Right? Am I getting adequate rest? So now this ties into the physical part. Am I getting adequate rest? If not, maybe we need to look into that, because we need the energy and the fuel to set the stage for the day. So, right, getting good rest, setting the stage for the day, having a mindset, a mantra, not just rolling over and getting into maybe social media or this, that, and the third, or the news and all of that. No, maybe set the stage for the day. And then all throughout the day, check back in with your goals. Am I on purpose? I said I was going to get XYZ done by noon. Do a check-in. Did I get it done? Maybe some things happened that threw me off. How do I adjust, recalibrate? But one headline at the end of the night needs to be, I accomplished what I set out to accomplish. And if I didn't check every box, doggone it, I tried. I was flexible. And if I need help, am I willing to ask for help? And if we don't check enough boxes, some people would say, well, this doesn't work. Another person says, from an optimistic standpoint, tomorrow's a brand new day.
It starts over again. I get a chance to do it again.
That's right.
And what I'm hearing you saying, and me just summing it up in my brain, the way it works is, in order to thrive, you can't just exist. You have to be intentional about what your day and what your life is going to look like in order for those things to happen. And so you're planning out some of those things. You're not just saying, hey, I just woke up. In order to get a good night rest, you know what you have to do, because you know what keeps you sleepless and you know what allows you to sleep, right? So whether it's the meal that I eat in the morning or in the evening and how late I eat that meal, there's some decisions that we have to make daily.
That's right.
In order to become that person you need to be, right?
That is good. I got a picture in my office that I think I got from Jamaica. Yeah, it's Jamaica. And it's two women out with water buckets out in the water getting water for the day. And I love that visual because they're being, to use your word, intentional. Mm-hmm. Bringing back what the family's going to need. Like that great teacher, you being in education, right? Understand that principle. We got a problem for today if Dr. V's figuring out what he's going to teach as the kids walk in. Right? We got they're gonna have some fun that day, right?
And I'm not gonna say those days never happened.
Right. But we may have to be able. There may be some days where we need to obviously need to be able to roll with the punches. But the preparation, the intentionality, doing the homework, doing the research, and that's oftentimes what separates the good from the great. They're workers, they're planners, they're strategizers. Somebody might say, you might out-talent me, but you're not going to outwork me.
Yes.
You're not going to out-prepare me. And, just hearing you share a little bit of your story, I just see nuggets of that. And how you talked about some of your adversity growing up, right, with some of your challenges, and how I'd imagine you had to navigate to get where you are. That's a good example.
Absolutely. We've taught. Oh man, this has been good. I'm taking notes like crazy, so I'm not gonna lie, because I learned from everybody on here.
Likewise.
What did we talk about that you want to make sure that our listeners and the listeners who hear this, like you said, some are going to hear it in the next week, some are going to hear it in the next years. What would you want to make sure that we talked about that you left on the table, whether it's teaching somebody, motivating somebody, inspiring somebody, or just things that we need to know? What would you leave us with?
I'd leave with the listeners, it's okay to dream. We can afford to lose a lot of things in life. Our dreams, our beliefs, and our goals are not any of them. Maybe you find yourself in a rough spot, or maybe you've experienced some trauma or some pain or some abuse, or it's just life that's hitting you. I encourage you to ask for help. There's people who wake up every day trying to figure out how to help you reach your goals. If you reach your hand out and don't get love shown back, don't quit, don't give up, don't try. So many people I've met with, I've counseled, told me, this is their numerous time trying, but they didn't give up. And I encourage you not to give up. And then do something about those goals, those dreams, those beliefs. Invest in them, invest in yourself. And ultimately, have faith in God. And to never, ever lose faith in yourself and in God. Dr. B, thank you for sharing this platform.
Absolutely. And thank you for being on. And is there a way that, somebody hears this and goes, I just want to have a conversation with this man. So I think he can help me. How would they be able to do that if that's something they would love to
Absolutely. Do? They can find me online, Michael T. Brown. If you just Google search Michael T. Brown LPC, you can find my different counseling platforms. You can find me on Twitter, which is now X, and it's MT Brown 98. You can find me there, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, they can find me. My website, brownsleadership.com. I'm out here, not hard to find.
I love it. Well, thank you again for being on. For those of you who are watching this, maybe it's the first time. And you're going, man, that really resonated with me. It resonated with my spirit. I don't want to be that person who feels like I just exist every day. I don't want to be that person who gets up in the morning and go, I'm not even sure what I need to do because I'm not around the right community, right around people. And I want to tell you, there are people out there. Continue to search, continue to dream, continue to find ways to have others be a part of your life. And one of the ways to do it is go ahead and hit subscribe. Go ahead and hit the notification bell so you can get notified when these come out. And I'm not saying because there's a whole bunch of stuff that Dr. Brian Arnold is saying right now today, because it's not me, but I've interviewed now over 110 people of Black men who are doing something and have found a way to do it. I promise you, if you start going through them, you will find somebody not only that you resonate with, but somebody who has or done some of the same things that you've done, and you'll feel like, hey, I can go on, I can move on, because we all have greatness in us. God put everybody on the planet for a purpose, and all of our purposes are different. All of our purposes have to do, in my mind, of serving others in a way that makes us better as a community. And so thank you guys for being on. Thank you, Michael, I can't wait to talk to you again and follow up and find out how you're doing and that kind of stuff. And for everybody else that's on here, I can't wait to see you on the next one. I want to tell you, don't forget that you are God's greatest gift, and he loves you if you allow him to. And we'll look forward to talking to you on the next one. You guys have a wonderful, great day.